Welcome to the KidMin podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything KidMin
and pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Virginia and I spent some time last season when we had guests on the podcast to ask some extra questions for us to compile a series that we're calling Ask the Experts. And so we're really excited to be giving you another installment of Ask the Experts today. And one I think is really, really interesting, not only just because I'm very interested in the topic, obviously, but also I'm really excited for you to hear our guests and their answers to this question, because I think they all came at this question with such interesting individual ways to give advice.
Yeah, they each kind of answered from a different angle. And I feel like sort of having all of these different perspectives is super, super helpful. And that's why we did this series, is because we wanted to get different perspectives on the same question and compile them all into one spot so that we can talk through all of these perspectives and ideas and ways of thinking about these particular questions. So
Right. And so our question that we're going to have today is, how can we partner with and equip parents to be the primary disciplers of their children? And I think that that's just such an interesting question, because one of the things about children's ministry that can be really challenging is that I think that parents, especially if they're newer in the faith or not super strong in their faith, kind of bring their kids to you and say, here, I need you to teach them all about the Bible. I need you to teach them all of the doctrine. I need you to help them understand, because I don't really know how to do it at all.
yeah, and I definitely think that is, I think that is a cultural expectation that people have. But I do think that within our individual churches and within our individual ministries, that is a culture that we can shift with intentionality with our parents and families, to help parents understand that, no, God has called you to be the primary disciplers of your children. We are here to support you, walk alongside you, help you with resources, equip you. But that is ultimately your job as parents, is to be that first level of teaching for your children, explicit teaching, and through your life and through your example. And so we've got lots of really great answers from our guests today about equipping parents for that.
So let's just jump in. Our first guest is actually two guests that we had last year. In our episode 108, How to Teach Kids Theology, we spoke with Sam Luce and Hunter Williams. Sam Luce is the Executive Pastor of Ministries at Redeemer Church in Utica, New York. And Hunter Williams is the children's pastor of Ridgedale Baptist Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And they co-host their own podcast called the Cross Formed KidMin podcast. Listen in as Sam and Hunter answer our question.
So what are some ideas of how we can partner with parents, equip parents to be the primary disciplers of their children?
I would say see family ministry as a lens and not as an attachment to your children's ministry. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes it's like we have our children's ministry and it's like, oh yeah, we need to do stuff for family, so we attach family stuff on it. Mm-hmm. Where I would shift that and say, you need to see everything in your children's ministry through the lens of family. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, it will completely change how you operate your budget, how you operate your calendar, how you look at curriculum, how you teach that curriculum. And I'm speaking from like what we're going through right now at my church. Like 2025, we said this is the year where we're going to get better at seeing things through the lens of families. And so that means, for example, there's been some events we canceled this year that we've always done because it didn't seem to be really getting at equipping families well. There's been some things we've added, and then there's been events we've tweaked. Like one event we're tweaking this year is instead of doing a normal VBS, we're doing a family VBS, where instead of parents dropping their kids off and leaving, families stay and they do all the VBS stuff together as a family. And so that would be my encouragement, is see everything through the lens of either connecting with or equipping families, because you need both. You can't just throw resources at them. You got to have connection too, because they're not going to trust your training if they don't trust you. So connecting with families is huge. And that could be as simple as like texting families every day to check in on them and stuff, or having some one-on-ones. But that would be my tip, is see things through the lens of family. And this one's a little more upfront, but you need to put your money where your mouth is. If you say families are important, then your budget should show it and your calendar should show it. Don't say that with your lips, but then like you have nothing that you give time for or money towards. So you should be investing in it with your budget and calendar significantly. So those are my suggestions. See it through the lens of family and show that through your budget and calendar.
Yeah. I'd say for me, it'd be relationships and resources. I think one of the best ways you can partner with families is by knowing those families well, by loving those families well, by showing up when when they're going through difficult things, just by being present. And I think sometimes we so often try to make our, in churches, there's so many things going on that we try to categorize everything into or shrink everything into an event. And like if there's if there's marriages that are struggling, we just try to, we got to do a marriage class, or we try to lump everything together instead of just showing up, and just showing up on their front doorstep and saying, what's going on? How you doing? And I think that was one of the things that was reinforced again to me during COVID was what really made the lasting impact wasn't the hours and hours that we put into making a 25-minute kids TV show for our kids during COVID. It was when we showed up at their house and dropped off supplies, or when we showed up at the hospital when someone's grandpa was in the COVID unit. And it was when we did those things, when we showed up and made your presence known. And I think in kids ministry, I think this is one of the things I did on accident. I should have done it more on purpose. I think, I've been in the same church for 28 years, and our youth pastor, he was like 2 years old or 3 years old when I came. And so I asked him, I said, what did
awesome.
What do you remember most? What did I teach that stood out to you most? And that's I said to him, and he's like, well, actually, he goes, I don't really remember anything you taught. And that was a little bit of a blow. I'm like, okay, all right, that's not a good resume builder, I don't think. But he said, I remember this. I was in the hospital. He goes, and you came and you brought me a video game and you prayed for me when I was scared. And the reason why is because I remembered what it was like to be a kid. And I remember what it was like to be scared in a hospital. And I think this is that whole relational aspect of ministry is something that we have to be better at. We try to make everything streamlined. And I tell our kids ministry leaders and youth ministry leaders all the time is that we need to be efficient with problems so we can be patient with people. And so often we try to create these processes that make us efficient with people. And that's not what we're called to do. We're called to do things that feel like a waste of time, because that's what shepherds do. You just sit next to somebody who's in the hospital and they're in a coma. Like, how does that help anybody? What it does is you're ministering to that person and to that family in a way that can't be measured in statistics, that can't be measured in church growth strategies. It's right. So I would say relationship. And the other thing I would say, secondly, is resources, is making sure that you are finding good resources that are available to kids, to leaders, because we live in a world now where information isn't the problem. There's information everywhere. The problem is, how well are we curating that information for the people that we lead? We have to find good resources, find things that are true. We have to find things that reinforce the values and the direction our church is going. There's a lot of great things out there, but some of them might be counteracting, the thing that God's calling us as a church to be. So find good resources and make sure that you point those clearly to your parents to say, hey, these are some of the things that will help you grow and develop as a parent, as a grandparent, as a foster parent, whatever it is that God has you to do.
I love the way Sam and Hunter shared in their answers for this question. And I think part of the reason why I loved it so much is that they really gave us a great starting point, a big picture thought of how we can look at our ministry and really be intentional with helping parents become the primary discipler.
Yes, because I feel like each one of them represented sort of different ministry philosophies. And I loved that Hunter spoke about specifically transitioning his kids' ministry to a more family ministry model, which I know there are lots of churches doing that. And there's a lot of interest around that, of taking our age-graded ministries and incorporating the whole family and not making those quite so strict or quite so siloed into little age-graded groups, and involving the family more. And then I felt like what Sam's suggestions were something that anyone could do, because not everyone is in a position or in a season or even interested in trying to overhaul their whole ministry model. That could be a lot or way too much, but there are lots of practical suggestions that he gave that could be applied in any sort of ministry setting. So I love that they kind of gave these two separate answers that are, sort of ministry model, and then also can be applied to any ministry model.
Well, and I think that was what was fascinating to me about the answer, was to first really look at it. He used the phrase, use it as a lens, not an attachment. And it was the idea of that you see your entire children's ministry as partnering with parents, as opposed to, this is my children's ministry. What kind of activities and programs and events can I do that are going to help our parents do this? And so it's really taking that big picture look. But I think we can do that even, like you said, so many times we do things in silos. And so for us to be able to really look at our ministry as a whole, that we don't just minister to children, we're ministering to the entire family. And so for him to talk about, like, for example, starting a family VBS, that is a real way to help parents see that they are the primary disciplers, and they're coming alongside their kids and learning with them and helping them learn. And so I think that that's just a really great way. And that helps with the connections and the relationships that they were talking about building, because the more you get to know the parents, the more you build that relationship with them, the better you can partner with them to be able to disciple their children. And so I think it's just a really helpful way to look at the topic, so that it's not quite so scary of, okay, here's this thing we have to add, but this is how I look at my entire ministry.
And I think because they both touched on building those relationships with families, getting to know your families, having families feel like they know you well, so that they trust you, and so that they'll come to you, and so that they'll listen, to you and come to your trainings, for example. And I think that is, for a children's ministry leader, through relationship is one of our best ways to assess what our families need, what would help them, what would be a blessing to them. I think for me personally, at one point, very early in ministry, I thought, let me do a survey of parents and try to ask and see what they're thinking, see what they want. And that's not a bad thing, but one thing within research methodology is that people don't know how to self-report very well. People don't always know what they need. People don't always know how to explain what's going on or how to describe what's going on. And so I feel like it's through relationships that you're going to get the best pulse on what is going to be most beneficial to the families in your ministry. And so I love that they both talk about that.
Right. Well, and I think it's just really important for us to remember, as we're planning events for the year and we're setting our calendars too, that we don't need to do, and we've talked about this a lot, we don't need to do events just for the sake of events. We don't need to do the things that we've always done just because we've always done them. And yes, you're going to have a few people in your ministry that might say, oh, I really miss, this family night thing that we did or this, but we have to really look at, is it beneficial to our families? Is it encouraging their growth in their relationship with Jesus? Or are we just adding more things for them to do? And so it's really looking intentionally at your ministry and how you are supporting and encouraging your parents and how you are providing the things that they need, not just the things that you've always done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like they said so many great things in there. One of the things that Sam said that I love was being efficient with problems so that we can be patient with people. I was like, ooh, Lord, I need to hear that. And then I also liked Sam talking about the problem isn't access to information. It's curating useful, helpful, good, solid, biblically sound resources and information for our families, which can be time consuming because that means we're also, sort of sifting through the stuff that's out there. But I think that is so beneficial for families because if we're going to ask them to invest in their children, we want to also be able to say, okay, here's a practical, usable, useful resource that you can take home and that you can use, that you can do. And so I think curating those resources is super important for families, for them to be successful in what we're encouraging them to do.
I do think it's really important for us to have resources, just like that you had that wonderful resource for your Christmas event that you did for your kids and your families.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was, just some examples of ways that we resource families at our church is, we do family Advent kits, which are things that we DIY within our church and with volunteer manpower. You can buy pre-made kits, but those can get kind of pricey. We DIY our family Advent kits with resources that we can either purchase inexpensively or things that we create. We did do a family Advent devotional that was a 24-day devotional with activities and scripture that was designed to be very, very short, that could be completed by families within 5 to 10 minutes. And would be age appropriate for a variety of ages. And so that was just a practical thing that we sent home with families or made available to them. And I would love to get to the point where we can offer something like that each quarter so that once a quarter we have a free resource for families to do family discipleship. I am working on an Easter resource right now. Involving, it's not going to be a devotional booklet. It's going to be like little paper chains to where you add one little link to the chain each day leading up to Easter with scripture and prayer prompts and little questions for families to talk about. And then certain days will also have eggs that kids will open that will have certain items related to various scriptures. And so it will be hopefully a very fun activity. But I would love to get to the point where we're resourcing parents with something like that every quarter. Some other examples of things that we do at specific points with our parent and child dedication, we provide families with usually a parenting book of some sort. We've done different parenting books at different times, a biblical parenting book. Also try to give them resources for little devotional things or a baby book or something that they can do actively with their child. Whenever a child makes a profession of faith, we have booklets as well at that time. The I'm a Christian Now booklets that we send home and encourage parents and children to do together. And so we try to resource families at these significant sort of life decisions or junctures. And then also I'd love to get to where we are resourcing families on an ongoing basis, quarterly or seasonally throughout the year.
Well, speaking of resources, we're actually compiling a list of all the resources that we've recommended on the podcast over the last couple of seasons to put that on our website so that you'll have that readily available. Below, I'll also put the link for Virginia's Family Advent Devotional, and hopefully I'll be able to talk her into us doing an episode all about her Easter one when it's completed so that we can get you all of that information as well. If you're interested in reading Hunter and Sam's book on how to teach kids theology, that's also included with their information in the show notes. Our next expert that we interviewed last year, we interviewed in episode 104, Raising Disciples. It was an interview with Dr. Teresa Roberts. So Teresa Roberts is a professor of ministry and Christian formation, the program director of children's ministry, and vice president at Ozark Christian College. And we just had a wonderful conversation with her talking about her book on raising disciples. And we asked her the same question.
So how can we partner with and equip parents to be the primary disciplers of their children?
I think it begins by inspiring them that they are discipling their child no matter what. It's just, what are they pointing their child toward? Every parent needs to just recognize that they are primary discipler because their child is around them the most. Even as they grow older, they're still around their parents the most in terms of quantity of time. And so when they're with mom and dad, or with mom and stepdad and, stepdad and, all of the different combinations of families we have today, like, where is their attention? Where's mom and dad's attention? Where's their other caregivers' attention? Because that's where their child's attention is going to be also. And so starting there and then resourcing parents with the things that they need for their own discipleship, the parents' discipleship, and then also with a child's discipleship. And I think that could really help move the needle on children growing up, knowing the Lord, and having this firm foundation so that when they get into those middle school, high school years, which are so tumultuous, that this firm foundation exists, that they know is there, and that they will stick to it, and they will retain in God throughout their lives.
The thing I love about Teresa, one, is that I just love her heart. I love her heart for ministry. I love her heart for children's ministers and how she loves to train and to help people be better leaders and teachers. And so I think that was why that just made her answer so exciting to me, because she was talking about how we can inspire our parents to be disciplers of their children through the way that we speak to them and train, and the way we provide them opportunities to learn how to do it, but also just by an example too of it.
And I love her saying that you are discipling your children no matter what. You are teaching them. You may not be explicitly teaching them, but through your lifestyle, through your actions, through your habits, you are implicitly teaching them. So you are discipling them no matter what. Right. And so we do want to be thoughtful about what we are communicating. And I love that she said, where parents' attention is where kids' attention will go too. Right. And I loved that because one, that's so true. Yeah. And it's something that we rarely give a lot of conscious thought towards. I feel like it's very easy for us to sort of slip into just these habits of giving a lot of attention to things that maybe we've always given attention to. And then our kids just sort of follow in our footsteps. I think, phones and technology is one. Like it's, you see all these cartoons and critiques of society of like the whole family being on a screen at once. I think about like sports and athletics and, a family that loves their sports team and is all about their sports team, and kids who are all about sports, and the whole schedule and the whole lives just revolve around sports teams and not that sports are bad and not that technology is bad. None of it's bad, but how much attention are we giving to these things and what are we modeling to our kids? and just being cognizant that we are discipling them regardless. And so we want to be thoughtful and intentional and explicitly disciple them in God's word and implicitly disciple them through our own example. And so I feel like that was a good challenge for our parents and a good reminder and a good challenge to me personally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I've said this before in previous episodes, I'm sure that I talk about, it was really interesting because for me, when I was raising our daughter, I was really working hard to give her confidence and to, to pour into her God's word and strength. And I was amazed at the fact that no matter how often I was using my words to try to build that up in her, she was also seeing me in the things that I would be anxious about and the things that I wasn't so secure and confident in. And I really think she learned so much more just watching me as opposed to the words that I was trying to, to help her remember and hear every day. And so I think that was one of those moments of like, oh yeah, our kids really do. I learned that really early when she was very young, that they really do notice more what we do than what we say. And so we do have to make sure that we are being those examples, and not all parents know how to do that. I've told the story often too of the dad that came to me and just thanked me because we used the Bible in our preschool classrooms. He had the courage to read the Bible himself for the first time in his life because his parents had taught him that Bibles were to be on a shelf and to be, you were supposed to be careful with them and you couldn't touch them. And so for him to see us using the Bible each week with his kids gave him the courage to actually start reading the Bible himself. So it is through things that we can do to help train our parents, to help them learn, to help them understand how they can be examples for their kids.
And I am actually right now teaching through her book, Raising Disciples, with a group of parents and volunteers at my church. It's just a very practical book about understanding our role as parents, understanding our role as teachers, and then also just practical things about teaching and guiding and discipling kids. And so I'm very excited. We just started. We're only one chapter in as a group. So we just started, but I'm very excited about teaching through her book as a resource and a way to train our parents and to train our volunteers. And that's another one of those things that I do. I try to do once a year if I can manage it, or maybe twice a year. I don't think I've actually gotten to twice a year yet, but once a year doing an adult discipleship class like this one, offered to our parents and volunteers as a way to equip them, because there are so many wonderful resources and studies and things out there to do with our parents to help them feel more confident in being able to tackle discipling their children at home.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think that goes back to, I know so many times we as children's ministers are expected to always be working with the children and always to be on the preschool or the children's hallways. And so it makes it really hard, not one, for us to make connections, but also to find that time to be able to train and to disciple. And so I think it's really important for us to help our senior pastors to understand that if you do have discipleship on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night, or if you have the ability to be able to do a Thursday morning Bible study, or, do it another time if you don't have the Sunday night or the Wednesday night discipleship times, to be able to have leaders that are in your preschool and children's ministries that are leading the ministries and the activities that you have going on there, so that you can spend some time with parents and volunteers in this way, because it's just really vital for you to be able to not just build those relationships, but also give them opportunities to learn about how to disciple their children. Our final expert for this episode is the Reverend Kayla Smith. And she actually did 2 episodes with us last year, episode number 87 on balancing family and ministry, and episode 88 on trauma-informed children's ministry. Kayla is the Associate Director of the Reach Hurting Kids Institute and serves at Trevecca Community Church of the Nazarene as pastor of intergenerational discipleship. We love working with Kayla. We get to see her when we are at events like Children's Pastors Conference and get to visit with her. But she has such a heart for ministry, such a heart for children, and just gives us wonderful information on how to handle so many different aspects of children's ministry. And so here is her answer to our question about partnering with parents in discipleship.
How do you find that we can partner and equip parents to be the primary disciplers of their children?
Yeah, I think first we have to recognize that we are disciples before we can disciple. If we can recognize that we are co-pilgrims on the way of Jesus with our children, then it takes a little of the pressure out of it and invites you into this curiosity, this wonder space with your family that says, I wonder what God's going to do next. I wonder what Jesus would say in this situation. And it offers this mutuality to the faith that is invaluable with kids.
And I love that Kayla's approach is really on a very individual, personal level for parents. We sort of started at the top of the funnel with these sort of big ministry philosophy ideas and have come all the way down to this very personal point of parents and parents first being disciples. First following Christ and being discipled by Christ, and parents walking in their own sort of path of growth in their relationship with Christ, and acknowledging that as children are learning, parents are also learning and walking with Christ and being discipled as well.
I think that when you are in charge of a ministry like preschool and children's ministry, it is very, very easy to constantly have this big picture vision of how to run a ministry. And we do. And obviously we talk about that a lot. We talk about how important administration is and how important organization is and how important teaching is and all the things. But I think what Kayla helps us to remember is that we are all growing in our relationship with Christ together in this community. That is what our church is. It's not just this institution that provides activities. It is a community of people who are committed to growing together in their personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And you, as the children's minister, are part of that community, just like the children are part of the community and their parents are part of that community. And so I think Kayla just really brings it back down for me to remember how important our relationships are, but also how important it is to share our journey with each other, to be a little bit more vulnerable than we allow ourselves to be on a normal basis. And I know that that's a slippery slope and a tightrope that we have to walk really carefully on, maintaining our leadership position and developing relationships. But I think that sometimes we do get so stressed about that we don't allow ourselves to make these connections with the people that we are doing life with.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, whenever I am teaching parents, whether it's at a discipleship class or at like a parent-child dedication class, I always want to be very transparent to be like, I don't have parenting figured out. I don't have this figured out. I don't do this perfectly. None of us will. But that I am a parent alongside them in this journey of parenting children and wanting to lead them to know and follow Jesus.
Well, Virginia and I are just so thankful that you took time to join us today. I hope that this was good information for you, that it was helpful. I know that it was really great to, even as many times as we have heard these answers when we did the interview and as we've worked on this episode, I am pulling new little nuggets of information from each answer every single time I hear it. And so I love being able to listen to other people share their hearts on a particular topic. And so hopefully this one was very helpful to you. We just would ask that you would like and subscribe and all the things. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.